Hey everyone, if you didn't know, I'm a big fan of Flight Simulator, and while practicing some flights, I kind of looked into some incidents and wanted to try to simulate some of them, and I'll highlight some of the ones that I thought were the most unique. This video will be about New Zealand Flight 901, which occurred November 28, 1979. This is a sightseeing tour around Antarctica, and it leaves from Auckland, and what happened is the plane experienced this.
500, 400, 300, 200, 100, 625.
So what would cause a plane to slam into a mountainside with 257 people on board? This air incident is unique because of everything surrounding it. So obviously this is all me simulating the flight, and what you're seeing now is what most of the 14 other flights experienced on this sightseeing tour. Tickets to the sightseeing tour back in '79 was $359 New Zealand dollars, which is equivalent to about $3,000 today. This flight was piloted by James Collins, who had about 11,000 flight hours and 2,000 hours in the plane, which was the DC-10. Flight Simulator didn't have it, so the best I could get was the Airbus 320 Neo. First officer was Mark Kaysen with about 8,000 hours and 1,300 in the DC-10. And then we also had a flight engineer, Gordon Brooks, with about 10,000 flight hours. And Brooks was the only one that done this flight before. So the big thing here is to note there was a minimum safe altitude of 16,000 feet. There were small areas around Antarctica that could go down to 6,000. But what would happen during these flights is most people would go below this. And this was very interesting. You can see these pictures from magazines if you look up the tours and certain videos and pictures that people have took on the plane. I mentioned this because this comes very important in the reports. The first report was done by Ron Chippendale in 1980. Chippendale stated that the crew followed the nav track, which was set to Mount Erebus, which caused the accident. He cited the crew may have experienced a phenomenon called whiteout, and I did my best to simulate this in Flight Simulator, but basically this is when light filtering goes through the clouds and is reflected off the snow, which basically makes the appear there's really no horizon. You can't tell where the ground and clouds are, and it makes it hard. And this is the best shots I can kind of get of showing that. You could kind of see where it would start blending, and you can't really tell. Obviously, not the cloud coverage wasn't all the way down. If I did that, it didn't really simulate what they were experiencing, but there was some overcast above, and that was one of the reasons they did drop down below to around the 1,500 feet that they ended up crashing at. Chippendale also stated that the crew was kind of unsure, or gave the presence they didn't really know where they were at, and kind of blamed the whole incident on the pilots. They were the ones that ran into a mountain nonetheless, but is that really the true story? The report was kind of weird at times, so they actually pulled in a second opinion. This second opinion kind of came through that the report mentioned that the flight coordinates were updated to go from the McMurdo Sound to Erebus, but it was also noted that the other 14 flights did more visual flying, which visual flying, if you're unaware of, is what it sounds like. You're kind of using what you see to navigate versus the nav track, which is kind of guiding you through the flight plan. So there was some confusion here. Obviously, we talked about blaming the pilots. There were some changes. And this is where Mahan came in with a report in 1981, basically the public outcry and kind of focusing on there seems like something else was going on here. Mahan found that previous flights were authorized actually to go below this 16,000 feet. Like I said, there was pictures that existed of this, and that the radio communication center at McMurdo actually authorized Collins to ascend to 1,500 feet. So this is all allowed. Why did this happen? Obviously, that change in the flight plan was pretty huge. The original flight plan had it going to Williams Field, which was by McMurdo Station. It was off by a couple kilometers, which in flight isn't really a big deal. So it was a good landmark for making the plan. But while authoring the original plan, the author put in 164 instead of 166, which had the flight going over McMurdo Sound. This error was used throughout training and the first 14 flights. That's why the other pilots are allowed to go low, and going through the sound makes sense for a sightseeing tour. It's more lower, you can get closer and see everything and the surroundings. So people didn't really question it. They assumed that's what the flight was. But during a flight in November 14th, Simpson noticed that he was in the middle of the sound versus closer to the McMurdo Station, which the Williams Field was near. Even though all the information provided kind of had it going through the sound, they were still referring to it. You would see the station or be closer to it. But he realized he was more in the middle, and he expressed this needed to be updated to be correct. But people thought that he actually wanted to go to McMurdo Station versus Williams Field. And again, the small kilometer change did not matter much, so they kind of changed it and left it alone. What they didn't realize, changing that 4 to a 6 now moved everything, the flight nav, to the middle of the sound, right to Mount Icabus. So this huge change had the huge impact. Since they were the pilots of the day of the crash used the nav track versus visual, the plane ended up going straight into the mountain. And this new report also found the crew was confident in thinking that where they were at. They thought they were still on that original course that they kind of were trained for, of going through the sound. But obviously that was not the case, but there was no confusion or any concern in the radio. This actually led to a big thing that I won't get to today about cover-ups and what the New Zealand Airlines was trying to hide. There's a lot of cool documentaries on that, but I just kind of want to cover the incident itself, and I found it was unique that this one was kind of done throughout training and just miscommunication. This was inspired by, I've been listening to a podcast called Black Box Down, which I will link the episode of this here. Also link the wiki page and article I found. I saw the Weather Channel actually did a documentary on this in 2015, but their player doesn't work right now. So if it works by the time I upload this, I will link that as well. But I hope you enjoyed, and it was kind of fun trying to simulate this and fly along a path and get that all correct. But I hope you enjoyed, and let me know in the comments what you think. Thank you for watching. Peace.